Nice girls should be seen and not heard. Simmer down, Louisa. Tone it down, Louisa. For most of my life, I've been told I'm too much. Well, what if I told you that posting a naked picture of my middle-aged arse, sorry kids at the back, on the top of a volcano in Oregon led me on a radical journey to self-love and confidence, and in turn give permission to thousands of other women to shed their shame and find their confidence. That was my opener for my TED Talk. Now we can play TED Talk bingo, and you can count how many times I can drop in that I've just done a TED Talk. I got interviewed. I had a camera crew around my house this week filming me for a documentary. And we were doing the chat on the sofa, and the interviewer said to me, "What are you most proud of?" And I burst into tears because I realized that actually it's only in the last 3 years I felt like I had anything to feel proud of. So from that person to today, it's been quite the ride. And it all started with bloody me. I mean, I grew up the daughter of a vicar, which you may or may not know. But I think the TED Talk, 1, 2, was about the rule book. The rule book we're given, particularly as women, that we feel that we've got to live by. This rule book that's written by shame and fear, society, the patriarchy, media, and each other. Because I think sometimes women can be their worst enemies. And I found it actually quite a struggle coming back to the UK from America. It's quite different. They're very, very empowering in America. And they celebrate success, whereas British women, we find that quite difficult. I had an amazing, after a series of really bad therapists over the years, including one who I flirted with for a year and cost me a fortune before I realized I needed to get rid of him and go and see an older woman who wouldn't take any of my shit. Sorry for the swearing, you guys. I finally found a really good one. And when I was planning my tour around the States in my vintage bus, she said, "You're so ambitious." And I went, "Oh, I'm not ambitious. What do you mean I'm ambitious?" And she went, "Why is that such a problem?" I went, "I just have big ideas." And she's like, "No, that's ambition." But for some reason, I got so hung up on it. For some reason, I found that word really difficult to accept. To me, that sounded like I wanted money, or I was greedy, or I don't know, it just had such strange connotations to me, this word ambition. And I think about it at least once a week. And now I will admit I'm ambitious. I have ambitious plans for the world and for womanhood. But it started in a very small group of women one night when I went to a women's group. And the speaker that evening, her name was Tammy Kent, and she calls herself the Vagina Whisperer. And she's a pelvic holistic coach. And she believes in very simple terms that our power, our trauma, our stress, and our joy also is all stored in our pelvic bowl. And that's the root of everything, right? That's the root of our womanhood. That's the root of life. And we're designed as women we're built to accommodate somebody else. That's how we're built. It started off like that from the minute we were born. But she believes that by being in touch with this and releasing, if you do have trauma, shame nestled away, then releasing it from here is the start of that. And so it was the very beginning of my woo-woo journey. It felt very woo-woo for me to go to hear this woman talk. I was most reluctant to go, and in fact only went because my friend needed a lift. She'd done her back in. So I went along, and I had a few thousand followers online, not that many at that point. But my message at that point was, get out your comfort zone, try new things, be present, say yes to everything. Anyway, we were meditating to our vaginas, and I felt sure someone was probably videoing it for a joke, so I had one eye open and was very reluctant to commit to this process. And I was like, come on, you say be present, say yes to everything, see what happens. So in fact, I closed my eyes and I did meditate to my vagina. And still to this day, I can't tell you entirely what she said or what happened, but I felt very, very different when I left. I felt a shift in me, literally, that night as I left. And the next morning, again, I woke up feeling very excited about something, and I had no idea what it was. And when I came out of the bedroom, my husband and son were like, "What is up with you?" And I was like, "I don't know, but me and my vagina feel very powerful, and anything could happen." My son was watching YouTube. I'd never paid YouTube much mind. And I was looking over his shoulder and quirkily quipped that maybe I should start a YouTube channel. And he was like, "Oh my God, what will you call it?" And I went, "I don't know, maybe I'll call it Margarita's Midlife and the Menopause." "Oh my God, no one will watch it." And he in fact left school. And he left for school. I texted me and said, what app do I need to start a YouTube channel? Because I want to set up a YouTube channel purely to annoy my teenage son. And she said, I believe it was a Wednesday. I don't expect you to remember. I don't know why I'm looking at you to confirm the day, which is neither here nor there. But it is part of the story that I went meditating to my vagina on the Wednesday. I think I called me on the Thursday, and she actually had one of her vlogging courses starting on the following Monday. She said, "I've got a course starting on Monday. Why don't you do the course? You could tweet about it, put it on Facebook, come and do the course." I was like, "Go on then." She says, "There's a bit of a workbook that you need to complete." So she sent me the workbook. And at the time, I was doing pop-up British tea parties for rich American women who thought it was dreadfully quaint. And in the workbook was coming, sort of identifying your brand pillars. It was your brand messaging. Who's your target market? And I was like, well, I don't want to make a YouTube channel about tea parties. I want free stuff. I'm going to do it about fashion, and I'll get free clothes. That was literally the whole mission. But over that weekend, just the workbook challenged me to come up with an entire business plan. I spent the whole weekend coming up with a new business plan. I wanted to become a personal shopper, but I wanted to be sustainable. I didn't want to encourage women to buy more stuff for the planet. So I came up with a sustainable fashion business where I would take people vintage shopping and train them how to vintage shop and how to restyle what they already had. And I started, while I was in the process of coming up with a business plan for the course, which started on the Monday, we're still only 48 hours from the vagina meditation, I came up with an idea to do these vintage shopping tours of Portland, and I sent a quick proposal to Airbnb, who did experiences, so if you went to a town, you could go on an experience with a local. By the following Wednesdays, they'd said yes, and I had my first clients within a week of the vagina meditation. And I did the course, and it was amazing. Moira was on the course, and that's how we first met. And I started working with women from all around the world. They would come for these vintage shopping tours, and I would send them a little form before they came. What do you want out of the course? What do you want out of the experience? What's your style? How would you describe your style currently? What are you looking to do? And every single woman and man, because I had a lot of men too, started with what was wrong with them. Every single form, without fail. I'm too tall, I'm too short, my tits are too long, my bum's too big. It gradually began to break my heart that every one of us starts with what's wrong with us and what they can't do. I can't wear yellow, can't wear stripes, spots don't suit me. Who's told you all these things? Who's told you all these things? And so it became my mission not to dress them stylishly, but just to freak them out. They could do whatever they wanted. And there was no rule book. And I enjoyed empowering these women out of their comfort zone, and these men so much. I also have a huge spending addiction, so I did a lot of shopping while I was helping them shop. And my wardrobe filled with some really amazing vintage pieces, and I then started to rent out my clothes to women to try, because it's a great way to encourage women who've lost their confidence to start. It's a great place to start with fashion. It's a really simple way just to feel a bit braver, just to put on the sequin cardigan and go to the supermarket, or and see how it feels, and just take one step at a time. And sometimes it's as simple as wearing the best dress that you've got out for absolutely no apparent reason and just seeing how it feels. And I think that's a large part of why I dress like so wildly, because I love the people it brings to me and the chats that I have. That's how I started to find my voice, was because of that course. And that work then led on to The rental business had just started to take off and COVID hit, and my confidence had been growing just about as fast as the distance between my husband and I. And there is a definite link between the two. And I moved into the spare room, and I started to find my voice in the spare room. Lockdown came. Lockdown, the spare room coincided with an amazing storm with menopause. And I started to share more of my journey online. And while I'd been talking about fashion and my hikes and my cute salads for quite a long time, when I started to just share myself and my journey online, that's when women started to come. They were knocking on my digital door, looking for a place to belong, to find inspiration, to connect. And I realized just how lonely so many of us are. And we're all shut in our own heads with this stupid damn rule book telling us what we can't do instead of giving us permission to do instead of what we can't do. And the more I shared, people would thank me. Thank you for being so vulnerable. Thank you for sharing your story. But I was finding just as much power in my community. And my community was growing so fast, and they were encouraging me to be more and more courageous. And that's how I ended up buying this bus and driving around the States. And when I set off driving around the States, my plan was actually relatively simple. I just wanted to go and meet all these women that would share their secrets with me and their direct messages, a complete stranger. And so the idea was I'd buy this bus, I'd do it up so everyone would see her coming, and I'd use it as a beacon. And the plan was to throw events as I traveled around the States to connect women locally, and then I'd connect them and then I'd roll on. And I felt sure I could change the world by the time I got to New York. And I did. That's what I did. I found a bus. I crowdfunded the bus with a bunch of women who completely believed in the self-love revolution mission. And I set out on this journey. And just before I left, someone asked me, how will you tell, when you get to New York, how will you know if it's a success? And I was like, I don't know, because at the moment, the mission is literally one woman at a time, one direct message at a time. If I can make a difference in one person's day, then to me, that seems like quite a good day at work. But I don't know. I'll see when I get to New York, I guess. I don't know what the measuring stick is for this. And I threw 10 events. It varied from having three women to when I arrived in New York speaking at a sex exhibition to 350 horny New Yorkers about the fact that their middle-aged sex life wasn't doomed, and they did in fact have their best years ahead of them. But it wasn't the events that ended up being the power in the tour. The power was the bus. The bus. People would see me coming and they would Google me. I had a QR code on the back of the bus. So when I was driving down the freeway, this is where I should have had a picture of the bus so you could all go, oh. But I decorated a pink and green leopard print, and on the back was a big QR code. So as I was driving down the freeway, people could click on the QR code and go straight to my Instagram to see what I was doing. And just by looking at my Instagram, it gave permission to women to come knocking on my door. So they knocked on my digital door and they came knocking at the bus door. And while I threw the events, it was the women who in need who came knocking at the door of the bus looking for help. In one campsite alone, just in Arkansas, there was 3 women dying of cancer without any health insurance, where I stayed and set up a women's group, and they still support and cook for each other. The woman who was been beaten up by her husband, who was sitting on my doorstep in Austin with her suitcase. She moved into the bus for a few days till we could get her into a shelter. Everywhere I went, that would be the hockey. Everywhere I went, the women on the run from domestic violence, from fundamental religion, women who'd lost their homes in the pandemic and in divorce. And then I met so many badass women who'd just thrown their rule book out and are living life on the road on their own terms already, on their buses and in their RVs. And it was so inspiring. And I realized the revolution is not a one-woman show. It's literally person by person and human by human. And that's the power of the revolution. It's not a massive media campaign. It's the effect that each of us have in our lives. The kids are downloading from us. The next generation are looking at us as women. And not just the girls, the boys. It's almost more important though, because the boys are watching us. And I want to influence a world where it's not perfect, where we make mistakes, where we fuck it up, and that's okay. because that's real and that helps everyone around you realize that it's not perfect and that you're not alone. So the power in the stories, these honest, true stories of how you're getting to where you are so incredibly powerful and so incredibly important. And I'm so incredibly proud of you for taking these steps today. And I'm so excited to find out where it's going to lead. Already, for the people who spoke in December, it's May. You can see the difference and the effect that it's had on women who've done the course already and the joy that that spreads on to other people. Shedding shame is so powerful. Me Too, the Me Too movement was the first time in 30 years that I realized that my sexual trauma was not my fault. 30 years in between that happening and that movement. And I think now, of all the women who are finding their voice, I mean, the internet's the devil in the deep blue sea. We know the pitfalls and the fake stuff that does your head in. You're looking, thinking what you should be doing or what you're missing out on. But it's helped, I think, particularly women find their voices and find their people. And it's so important to surround yourself with the right people. I think the more I have shared, the more powerful I have felt too. I've done a lot of, I do a lot of podcasts. People like it because they never know where I'm going to go on a podcast. I'm quite risky. So then they're never stuck for conversation. And I talk a lot about my finance shame, and I talk a lot about my spending problems. But one thing I'd always managed to keep a secret was the fact that I had stolen money from work to fund my habit, if you like. And until I went on Dorno Porter's podcast with 1 million listeners and blurted it out by accident on the podcast. And afterwards, I was like, oh my God, what have I done? And then literally 2 weeks later, I went on Dirty Mother Pucker's podcast, who also has around, 500,000 listeners, and then blurted it out again. But do you know what that did? That opened the floodgates for thousands of women to direct message me and share their finance shame and tell me their secrets and the awful way that they've had to live, burying their horror of their behaviors. And again, I was like, oh my God, I thought I was the worst person in the world. So it helped me as well. And it's given me another level of strength and power. So as fearful as it is to put those worst bits of you out there, you just have no idea what you can do. I'm going to leave you with a bit of a cliche, right? You never know who's watching, who you're inspiring. You have no idea. So being brave, putting it out there. You don't have to get out. You don't have to get naked on top of a mountain like I did or leave your husband on a vintage bus. Your journey to your confidence and your voice and your mission is as unique as you are and as unique as your journey is your journey. And that's the magic of it. My TED coach in Portland, 3, I've done quite well. My friends and family are like, all right, enough. My TED coach confesses to me in Portland that actually she followed me on Instagram, felt so inspired to move to Portland that she did. She uprooted her family, moved to Portland, joined my gym and started CrossFit. But it actually also turns out that she was head lecturer in communications at Oregon University and ended up being my coach for my TED Talk 4. Where I stood in front of 5,000 people and shared a naked picture of myself and talked about a dick pic changing my life. So you just never know who's watching. The direct message I got from a lady saying, 2 years ago, you were walking across a zebra crossing and you gave me the biggest smile and I was having the most miserable day and I will never forget that smile. I really needed it in that moment. How small is that? It's the smallest thing. You never know. And I will leave you with probably one of the most incredible direct messages I've ever had, apart from the loads of women who seem to have left their husband because of me, but I don't encourage that. My message is very much find your own voice for yourself in your relationships. Show up for yourself. Because when you show up for yourself, you're showing up for your kids and those around you. And I loved being married. I really thought that asking for what I needed wasn't as important as what everybody else needed. And I ended up divorced. And I feel incredibly empowered by that now. But I kind of liked my husband. He was all right. It wasn't even him. It was my fault, or largely my fault. I seem to have elevated him to sainthood at some point. But one of the most incredible direct messages I ever had, I had recently, in fact, was a woman who had lost her baby. And she's watched my journey for a very long time. And I love that I've shared so much of my journey along the way. A lot of people are very invested in me and so excited. I now have this podcast and the TED Talk, and people are so excited and find it quite inspiring. This woman named her baby Lou to remind herself that she can do hard things, and that no matter how hard it gets, you just got to keep swimming, and you just got to keep taking those steps, keep being brave, and you never know what will happen. So keep taking your steps, keep swimming. I'm so proud of you all. Thank you very much for having me. I feel very grateful. Thanks.